Guten Tag und herzlich willkommen beim heutigen Webinar zum Thema Gaming Industry und E-Sports auf 3 Kontinenten mit einem besonderen Fokus auf den 3 Ländern China, USA und Polen. Mein Name ist Reanne Löning und ich habe die Ehre, dass ich euch heute durch das Webinar führen darf. Ich bin Programmmanagerin bei der Außenwirtschaft Austria. Die Außenwirtschaft ist die Internationalisierungs- und Innovationsagentur der Wirtschaftskammer Österreich und da bin ich für Kreativwirtschaftsexport zuständig. Kurz zusammengefasst bedeutet das, dass wir österreichische Unternehmen aus Design, Fashion, Musik, Film, Entertainment und natürlich auch die Gaming-Branche dabei unterstützen, um im Ausland Fuß fassen zu können. Dazu haben wir einerseits ein sehr umfassendes Förderprogramm im Rahmen der Internationalisierungsoffensive Go International, die dafür da sind, um Aktivitäten auf neuen Märkten zu unterstützen. Und andererseits organisieren wir selber auch sehr viele Veranstaltungen im In- und unter normalen Umständen auch im Ausland. Und dieses Webinar ist Teil unseres Angebots für die Kreativwirtschaft. Im Rahmen der Webinare geben wir eine Übersicht von innovativen Trends und Entwicklungen, aber auch Angebote und Businessmodelle, die wir für euch nach Österreich bringen und euch präsentieren, damit ihr euch davon inspirieren lassen könnt und das idealerweise auch fürs eigene Geschäft anwenden könnt. Wir berichten regelmäßig live aus unterschiedlichen Kreativwirtschaftsmetropolen. Und dieses Mal berichten wir aus den Gaming- und E-Sports-Hotspots Shanghai, San Francisco und Warschau. Heute zeigen wir euch, was der Erfolg der globalen E-Sports- und Gaming-Branche ausmacht, welche aktuelle Entwicklungen und Trends es auf wichtigen Märkten gibt und auch, wie österreichische Unternehmen davon profitieren können. Ziel dabei ist es, Vertrautes, aber auch weniger Bekanntes aufzuzeigen, und zwar aus 3 Kontinenten und aus 3 ganz unterschiedlichen Blickwinkeln. Und auch wieder mit dem Ziel, euch zu inspirieren und zu informieren. Die Gaming-Branche ist ein sehr innovatives, internationales und hochkompetitives Geschäftsfeld. Und österreichische Unternehmen in dieser Branche sind sehr gut unterwegs. Und Produkte und Angebote, die hier in Österreich entstehen, sind auf einem ähnlichen Level wie super Unternehmen und Beispiele aus anderen Ländern. Wenn man die gesamte Kreativwirtschaft betrachtet, dann sieht man, dass die Gaming-Branche ein zentrales Element ist, dass die Gaming-Branche sehr exportstark ist, denn 33% aller Umsätze, die in der Gaming-Branche gemacht werden, werden im Ausland gemacht. Auch wenn man sich Umsätze, Beschäftigung und Bruttowertschöpfung ansieht, gehört die Gaming-Branche in Österreich zu den stärksten Kreativbranchen. Und was es auch sehr interessant macht, ist, dass es eine sehr wichtige und niederschwellige Branche ist, um Unternehmen und auch Personen neue Technologien näher zu bringen. Und das passiert mittlerweile auch schon sehr stark in anderen Anwendungsfeldern, wie etwa in der Pädagogik oder auch bei medizinischen Anwendungen. Auch in unserem Veranstaltungsprogramm hat die Gaming-Branche einen wichtigen Fokus. Ein Fixpunkt zum Beispiel, das es schon seit vielen Jahren gibt, ist der Österreich-Stand auf der Gamescom, der von meiner Kollegin Marion Czernuter organisiert wird. Und trotz der herausfordernden Umständen sind wir zuversichtlich, dass die Gamescom nächstes Jahr wieder stattfinden kann. Und da wir jetzt auch gerade an unserem Programm für die kommenden 2 Jahre arbeiten, kann ich schon verraten, dass die Gaming-Branche auch in Zukunft einen sehr wichtigen Stellenwert behalten wird. Vielleicht noch kurz zur Struktur dieses Webinars. Nach meiner Einleitung werde ich meiner Kollegin Elisabeth Mindelberger übergeben. Sie ist die österreichische stellvertretende Wirtschaftsdelegierte für China in Shanghai. Und sie wird ein paar Facts and Figures zum chinesischen E-Sports- und Gaming-Markt mit uns teilen und übergibt das Wort dann Jim Yao, der uns über den E-Sports-Markt in China erzählen wird. Danach reisen wir weiter nach Kalifornien, wo der Leiter des Open Austria Büros in San Francisco, Georg Fürlinger, ein paar Wissenswertigkeiten über den amerikanischen Markt mit uns teilen wird. Danach übernimmt Andreas Breuer, der gebürtige Österreicher ist und Business Development Manager bei Google Play ist. Nach San Francisco reisen wir weiter nach Warschau, wo die stellvertretende österreichische Wirtschaftsdelegierte in Warschau, Johanna Breinesberger, und Piotr Gamrasi vom Technologiepark in Krakau den polnischen Markt vorstellen werden. Und vielleicht auch noch ein paar praktische Informationen. Der Großteil dieses Webinars wird auf Englisch stattfinden. Also wir werden gleich ins Englische wechseln. Ihr habt die Möglichkeit, im Chat Fragen zu stellen, auch während den Vortragen. Und die werden wir zum Schluss, also in der Diskussionsrunde, beantworten. Also das heißt, Sie können eigentlich jederzeit Fragen stellen und wir sammeln sie und werden die dann zum Schluss beantworten. Und da wir heute ziemlich viele Vortragenden sind, wäre es perfekt, wenn Sie auch die Namen der Personen, für die die Frage gedacht ist, dazu schreiben. Also das war jetzt meine Einführung. I will now switch to English and hand over to Elizabeth and Jim in Shanghai. And I wish you a very exciting and inspiring webinar with many new insights. And Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Reanne, for the introduction, and ni hao to everybody from Shanghai, one of the main esports cities in China. I'm the deputy head of the Außenwirtschaftszentrum Shanghai office and very happy to explore a little bit the Chinese esports market with you today. So why talk esports in China? Well, first of all, today we have almost 660 million gamers in China. If ever you take the subway in China, you won't be surprised that 3/4 of the revenues there are made in mobile gaming. Thing is, most of them, almost 500 million, are also following esports. Also by revenues, China is estimated to be the largest esports market in 2020, with sponsorship being an important source of income and the number of companies, gaming and esports companies, growing next to the giant Tencent. Finally, and that's also very important in China, the rules for esports and gaming are still very strict, but after years of console ban and months of licensing freeze for new games ended, government is now promoting and supporting esports. We have official athletes, we have clubs, we have master's degrees, and good media coverage of esports. Here you can see, for example, an article in Shanghai Daily about the League of Legends World Championship that took place a few weeks ago in a new FIFA stadium in Shanghai. So the question is, how does this huge market work, and will it work for you? To answer this, we invited a startup that has deep knowledge of the ecosystem and of its challenges for small and foreign companies. So our speaker today is Jim Yao, COO and co-founder of NPCG Gaming. This esports service provider, located in South China, was founded 7 years ago. Jim took care and was in charge of esports events planning for 5 years, with highlights such as League of Legends and Counter-Strike. And in the last 2 years, he focused on the launch of Onwear, esports apparel brand, and online fan shop for international esports brands that want to sell their products in China. Having said that, Jim, I would like to invite you to tell us a little bit more about the esports market in China and push start for your presentation.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited to be here as the representative of China. So the purpose of my presentation today is to help you guys to understand Chinese esports scenes and as foreign investors, why Chinese esports and gaming market is worthy to your attentions. Now, let me begin by sharing a little bit of history of esports in China. So, as Elizabeth mentioned, China's esports scene, had what I would like to call a dark age from early 2000s to 2010s. So at that time, although we have some success in popular esports games, like Counter-Strike and like World of Warcraft, esports as a whole didn't gain much of attention, and so a lot of players and organizations failed to last because of lack of funding. You guys can imagine, like, you are a pro player and you're weeks before attending a world-class tournament, and you don't even have a stable place to sleep, and you have to worry about how much you to pay for your food. It wasn't really an ideal situation. It wasn't until 2012 that's when things really started to change, and here I'm talking about the exponential growth of the esports scenes in general, due to companies like Tencent and Alibaba, Zouyu.com. Those industry giants really give a boost to the development of Chinese esports. That's why I would like to mention this formula of development, because this formula fundamentally defines how Chinese esports scenes went from the dark age I just mentioned to this fascinating industry that we all seen today. What happened was, before we have esports organization and players participating in the tournaments, but we don't have the ability to convert the performance, from the players into real revenues. And after 2012, we have Alibaba with its Taobao.com, which is kind of like Amazon of China. It's an e-commerce thing. And we have big streaming platform like Zouyu that allowed players and tournament organizers to connect with the audience and the esports fans. For example, through Taobao, the famous players can now have their own online shop to brand themselves, and on Zouyu, like those big streaming platforms, the tournament organizers and players as well, they can upload their video contents. They can stream their gameplay, stream their tournaments. It really gives a chance for Chinese sport to a way to convert their performance into real revenues, and that's the key for survival for any industry. I would say it's the profit, right? And then I would like to show you about a little about statistic and trend about the esports market. So in 2020, the global revenue of esports is $1.1 billion, American dollars. It's a huge number. And one thing I would like to point out is that 78% of those revenue comes from sponsorship and media rights, which means a lot of the revenue actually comes from people from all, from different industries generally, not just the gaming company, but companies with little to do with gaming, but they really want to participate in the esports market because they want a piece of a cake from it. And the growth of revenue is actually 50.7% compared to 2019. And out of all these charts, Chinese market share has percentage point of 35%, which is more than 1/3 of the total market. So as you can see, China's or esports in China has become very influential, and in terms of a scale of investment. And the one interesting thing is that during pandemic time, Chinese esports industry draws attention from 26 million new followers. In these difficult times, I think it's a very extraordinary, and it's really rare for any industry to have a growth in this pandemic time. So esports and gaming is very different because not everything have to be like a realtor, to be like other companies they can eventually, what I'm trying to say is they can publish their products online, and people can participate it in different places. So there's no limitations compared to other industry like in retails and shopping malls and restaurants. So I think in this difficult year, that's why it's working more attentions than usual. Here, so when we talk about Chinese esports, it's impossible to leave these 3 leagues out. So first of all, I would like to introduce this PUBG Champion League. So the game is PlayerUnknown Battleground. If you're familiar with esports thing or gaming, you probably know this is very popular game all over the world. And in China, we have this PUBG Champion League that gains millions of attentions since 2017. From the data I was able to gather, you can see it attracts 1.28 billion clicks on the social media and 500 million views on streaming. So and then there's another league I would like to talk about is King Pro League, because it's maybe in the foreign or in the Western culture, guys don't really familiar with another game called King's Glory, but it's a very popular game in China, probably the most popular mobile games I would say, because it has like 100 million monthly active user bases. And in terms for esports, it gains 350 million views on stream alone in 2016. And when it comes to, and another big thing is LPL, and that's why I want to mention it, because it also, not only because it has average of 25 million viewers per game day, but because it attracts attention from a lot of the sponsors. And here I would like to show you a picture. Here I put on the title, it's called Bigger Than Esport, because this is a poster for esport reality TV shows produced by Tencent and League of Legends Pro League. I want to share this because it shows how Tencent view the future of esports, and I would say this is an innovative way to connect esports with other forms of entertainment that are more familiar with vast majority of China. It expanded LPL's brand to even more audiences, and for a growing industry, this is very important. And for esports, I think Tencent wants to build it becomes more culture things like football or basketball today, that not just talking about sport, but it transform to all other types of form of entertainment. And here you can see the sponsors of the League of Legends, and you can see not these companies like KFC, Mercedes-Benz, and Nike's. None of these companies has anything to do with esports in the beginning, but they chose to invest in it nonetheless. And I believe there are three main reasons behind why people want to invest in esports. First would be the market potentials. So I'm talking about the increasing user base in gaming in general. And it, like I said, it has a huge amount of views and active followers. In fact, in Chinese social media on Weibo, there are more people talking about games in League of Legends than they talking about in the NBA, you know? So, so you can see there's a huge market potential, and also it allows the organizations and the companies to communicate with younger generations, to interact with younger generation and understand their behaviors when it comes to entertainments and consumptions, to grab their attentions. And also some organizations they invest in esports to send the message that our collaboration following closely to the mind of these younger generations, and we want to create bonding with all our customers, and it's really improve their corporate image. And also there's a lot of different strategy you can use when it comes to esports, because investing in esports is a lot different than investing in movie and TV shows, and you have a lot different windows of exposures and more interaction with audience, and there are different ways you can promote your products. Like you can endorse star players, streamers, commentators, and you can have product placement during the middle of the game, etc., etc. And on a personal note, so right now I'm working with Onwear. It's an esport apparel company. So what we do is we have these formulas of helping foreign organizations to connect with Chinese market. So for them to access Chinese market, we help them to do the promotions, and we're in charge of the promotions and production part, and we share profit with those foreign organizations. And one example I would like to share is TSM, with well-known clubs in esports scenes. They have millions of fans across the world from different games. China is one of them. They don't have the access to Chinese market, even though they actually have a sizable fan base in China for esports organizations. So we provide them an opportunity to promote their apparels to Chinese fans. So essentially, what we are doing is to give them the channel that we can convert from their influences into profits. And next, I would like to talk about a city to look at. So the biggest domestic esport market per se in China would be Shanghai, because it has the main venue for LPL matches, and it's also the home of more than 200 sport-related companies. It's where the headquarters of Tencent Sports and VSPN located. It also generates a lot of revenues. That here it says $3.2 billion. I believe it's about half of the total revenue in China, actually. So Shanghai is definitely the esports city to be focus on. And we have other cities like Beijing and Wuhan as well, but Shanghai is ahead of everyone else for now. I'll talk about some challenges ahead, and we don't really have a lot of time, but I would like to talk about some game publication examination in China, because as game publishers, especially as foreign game publishers, you need a Chinese corporation or business entity to publish game in China. Basically, because you can't, you need to apply a certificate, a copyright certificate, and game registration number. So you need these two certificates to actually publish game in China. Without this license, you can only publish like a test version of your game, so you can't really gain any profit of it. And for the culture part, I believe it's really obvious, like to always important to respect others' culture. Doesn't matter in daily life or business part. And I'm sure you already know this, but in the context of doing business in China and specifically in gaming industry, as foreign investors, there are some rules you should be aware of, because Chinese government really want to build like a green, healthy gaming cultures. So there are some sensitive subjects you should be refrained from, such as politics and religious and extreme violence. And you can't alter history events as well. One example would be like in the case of extreme violence, like the game cannot show the color of real blood. When there's like a bleeding or blood in the game contents, you have to change the blood color to blue or green or something else. And frankly, as a player, sometimes we find it a little bit excessive, but this is a situation we all need to get used to. Now, before I pass on this presentation to Yana, I want to say thank you everyone for listening. Esports has always been my passion, really, and it's really an honor to be here. I can't wait to know more about esports in the United States and Poland as well. So allow me to hand the floor to Rihanna.
A big thank you to Jim and also to Elizabeth for these very interesting and inspiring contributions and insights. We will get back to you later on with our questions. I can see that already some questions have arrived for you. But before we answer them, let's move on to Silicon Valley first, where Georg and Andreas are already waiting for us to make us acquainted with the special features of the American market. The floor is yours, Georg and Andreas.
Thank you so much, Rianne, for setting up this international webinar. Good early morning from San Francisco. It's a pleasure to give a short overview of the gaming landscape and in the US, and then introduce our next speaker, Andreas. Whereas gaming was once stigmatized as an addictive hobby, now gaming has entered social mainstream. New technologies allow for online social connection, much needed in times of the pandemic. And about 244 million people in the US playing video games underline this trend. That's an increase of 15% from 2018. And overall, the US gaming industry generated about 60 billion US dollar in revenue in 2020. So that's about 20% of the global gaming market share in the US. But gaming should not just be perceived as a pastime activity. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, has recently mentioned many of the best software engineers got into programming through video games. And he refers to that problem solving in video games often transfer to problem solving in software engineering. So he says that video games actually is a very powerful tool to also get kids interested in technology. We are both based here in Silicon Valley, and it's definitely one of those global centers in the worldwide gaming ecosystem. More than 300 game-related companies are based or have their headquarters here in Silicon Valley, and the same number also applies to Los Angeles. Renowned company here in the San Francisco Bay Areas are renowned brands like EA Sports, Unity, which just did an IPO, so it's now listed on the stock exchange, Twitch, Discord, NVIDIA, and Zynga. And especially mobile gaming continues to be the fastest growing segment in interactive gaming. About 24,500 new games are uploaded on Apple and Google App Store each month. Well, talking about Google Play Store, that's the perfect transition to our next speaker, based here in Silicon Valley, Andreas Breuer. I'm really happy to have you here on the webinar with us. Andreas is a very active member of our Austrian community here in Silicon Valley. He's a bridge builder and advisor for many Austrian and European media companies and startups. And currently he is head of business development at Google Play, with a special focus on interactive entertainment, gaming, and esports. Previously, he held positions in business development, sales, marketing, and operations for Google in the worldwide headquarters here in Mountain View and in Google's European headquarters in Dublin. Andreas is also a fellow WU Wien alumni, and he will give us an overview of interactive entertainment trends in the US and also provide insights to opportunities for you, Austrian companies. Andreas, thanks for being with us. The Zoom stream is yours. Please take it over.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Georg. And for those who don't know, Georg didn't really sell himself too much, but he's the co-director of Open Austria here in San Francisco, and he very much manages the community here and connects Austria with the SF Bay Area. So if there's ever a need to access know-how or create connections, he's the person. And I'm very grateful for the work that he's doing with the community here. So thank you for having me today. I'll speak for 15 minutes to cover the United States and the gaming market here. It is a very global industry, so I might branch out from the US here and there. But I want to just give you a sense for like what might be some opportunities. So real quick, and Georg was so kind to already introduce me. I'm currently working as head of business development at Google, and there I have a focus on interactive entertainment, gaming and esports. And it's really a dream job to have the opportunity to empower new businesses in a high growth industry. And you know, these days everyone seeks a little joy in entertainment. Many of us are stuck at home, and gaming is what helps connecting people. So it's even during these times just one of the most exciting industry to be part of. In today's presentation, I'd like to highlight a few global and US specific trends. That's what I kick off with. I have like 5 trends that I just want to touch on in these 15 minutes. And then there are a couple opportunities that might be relevant for Austrian companies to dig into. And it's really just illustrative, I think, those opportunities that I'm bringing up. But I looked through the list of attendees here, and it looks like some are very much part of the gaming industry, some are adjacent to the industry. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. But first off, I'll start with trends. So I'll lay out 5 trends. The first one is interactive entertainment. Next one will be mobile. I'll talk about top IP, innovation, and then esports. And we just heard so much about esports in China from Jim. And I'm a little sorry that I missed actually Worlds in China that he was just talking about. I was last year in Paris at the event, and it was one of the most fun events that I ever attended in. It feels more like the NBA finals in terms of like quality of those events at this point. So kicking off with interactive entertainment. Interactive entertainment has over the last couple of years exceeded music and print, but it's also knocking on the doors of the film industry. So at this point, gaming in many ways already exceeded basically movie theaters and sales there. This is not only due to COVID, but this is just generally a trend. And in many ways, it's knocking on the door on the film industry. So gaming at this point is $175 billion industry with the two biggest markets, both in terms of spend of players, so consumer spend, but also in terms of developer community being both the United States and China too. So they rival each other as the biggest markets. I mentioned that briefly, but I think one thing to really emphasize too is the current situation that we're all in with COVID-19 and measures in place. People seek entertainment, joy, and social connections. And so I think that also really helped gaming to be really on the front page and like be on people's mind. And this is just really one way to connect in a safe way. And I think while gaming probably just a decade ago would have been like very much stigmatized, now it is actually a safe way to build like healthy connections for people to remain mentally and emotionally healthy too, just by spending time with others and at the same time being safe in terms of like physically distancing. So that also contributes to like an ever more accelerating industry. So this year, the industry is expected to grow by 20%, and we expect the next couple of years to be high growth too. So then moving on to mobile. Mobile as the second trend. Mobile gaming is now the biggest part of the overall industry, but it also continues to be the fastest growing part of the entire industry. It's really fun to see that. And I think in many ways, people still think of like gamers being the ones who sit in gamer chairs in front of like super expensive PCs, reading Reddit, creating YouTube videos, or in short, just to be like nerds. But that's no longer the case really, because gaming is now a 2.5 billion player audience globally. And like that number is correct, 2.5 billion players. In the US, there's around 270 million smartphone users, and a majority of them are game players too. And that's something that is really close to my heart because Android enabled essentially the gaming industry to branch out from like a very niche kind of like audience to really enabling everyone in terms of developers to like reach audiences, but at the same time for players just to be able to play the games they have. And there is such a broad range of content that really resonates with everyone. And so it's a fun time, and we continue this journey over the next couple of years. The third trend I want to highlight is top IP. So games become more and more high fidelity. So if you think of one that is probably a more traditional game, if you think of Call of Duty or League of Legends, just 2 or 3 years ago, those games wouldn't have been fun on a phone. But now tens and hundreds of millions of players turn to them. And they are all coming to mobile. Call of Duty having been a huge success on mobile over the last 2 years or so, League of Legends currently being available in Southeast Asia and Korea, and coming to other markets later this year and next year. So really exciting to see the biggest games that are out there coming to mobile. With that, there is also ever faster networks with 5G, better devices, better CPUs, GPUs, and just amazing screens. So those enable really the most fun experiences on phones. And then games also create top IP. So one thing that I have in mind, and we have a speaker from Poland right after. I think that's just such a great story that I want to share, and I'm looking forward to hear a little bit more after. Isn't it amazing to see that a Polish fantasy novel turns into one of the most played games in the world? So I'm referring to The Witcher. And now, after becoming such a successful game, The Witcher then makes it into a Netflix movie, and gaming companies of today are turning into the world's leading entertainment companies. So I think it is fair to say the equivalent of what is in these days like a Disney, or to use like a German example, a ProSieben Media Group, those entertainment companies of the future are the current gaming companies. And they will be branching out from gaming only to become really global entertainment powerhouses. And so that's just really fun to see that development. And it feels a little bit as being part of the time when like a Disney was created, but just slightly different. And I'm really looking forward to hear a little bit more about what's happening in the Polish industry there. Especially like one company that comes to mind, CD Projekt, just being so successful. And I think just to put that on a map, that is at this point, the biggest or one of the biggest companies in the country, and really congratulate that team for their success. The next trend I want to highlight is innovation. Innovation is really the path to success, and if we think about a couple of areas there is social, because we can spend time with each other, and so there's going to be lots of innovation in that area when it comes to gaming, but also mobile gaming specifically. Augmented reality, I think that's a topic that a lot of people talk since quite some time, and I think it became kind of like mainstream when Pokemon Go had a huge success initially, but it's also going to be really interesting post-COVID. Currently, the demand for just being outside is really kind of like suppressed. So as soon as like that goes away, and hopefully we'll be in a more normal state again, then people want to be outdoors, but people still want to play games. So I think merging kind of like the real world with the virtual world is an opportunity there. And then 5G and faster networks will just enable new content and new innovation that we haven't seen so far. I'll just touch real quick on a fifth trend, and then I'll move over to the opportunities. We just heard about esports, but I just want to mention that too. So esports is just so much mainstream at this point. On ESPN, America's leading sports channel, you can watch League of Legends, you can watch Dota, Hearthstone, Rocket League. All of that is just totally mainstream at this point. Another example I want to give is AOC. I'm not sure how much you followed the American election, but she's New York's 30-year-old senator. She's a female, she's also immigrant, but she plays Among Us with her voters, streams it on YouTube and Twitch, and gets coverage all around the world. And I think that's kind of like a step forward from, if you remember still House of Cards, I think Frank Underwood was just playing Call of Duty by himself. And so I think just a few years later, that world looks very, very different. I want to now move over to opportunities for Austrian companies. I want to summarize that in like just 2 minutes or so. Reading through the list beforehand, I saw there was a couple of really, really interesting companies here. So I saw Awfully Nice Studios, I saw Redux, I saw Square Bytes, just a couple of indie devs. I hope that's the right description. And it's really fun to see content creators coming together and building something really fun and nice. And just one example that just came to my mind is a team called Supertreat. I think they're just like a handful of people based in Graz. They just had a year or two ago a big exit to a Herzliya Israel-based company called Playtika. So these companies are succeeding, and it's really, really fun to see that. I also saw members from like the telco industry, and gaming is really the 5G killer application. And so I can't wait to see what will happen over the next 2 years or so in this segment. I also saw GreenTube. That's a very, very interesting segment too. Social casino is around 20% of the US gaming consumer market. And I think a couple of Austrian companies are really leading in this segment. So really, really great to see an Novomatic subsidiary there as well succeeding. And then I saw a payment provider, PaySafeCard. I believe there were like others in the payments segment too. And that's just like an area that will continue to grow with like so many startups coming to market with various offerings and platforms to plug into. Very, very interesting opportunity. And then finally, I saw leisure, and I saw someone from Falkensteiner, for example, joining. Recently in Vegas, Atari Hotels just launched. So the gamer audience is probably an audience to tap into. And in the end, it's about providing a great leisure experience where people can just relax and have a good time. So I think there might be opportunities coming up too. And so I think those are like 5 trends that just came to my mind. And then one last example that I want to give is the industry is so big at this point that there are just like really interesting opportunities. One company that I'm advising at this point is focused on content moderation. So they are a Swedish startup with just 3 people at this point, and they focus on chat interactions and making sure that those are not toxic, that those are actually healthy interactions between players. And it's really fun to see that AI can be leveraged to do something like this. And I think there's a lot of AI know-how in Austria too. And that is just like one specific use case that just came to my mind because I'm really proud of what that team is doing. But just to illustrate like some of the opportunities that are around. And I think those are the trends that I just wanted to highlight. And I'll let Rihanna take it from here. She will guide you through the rest of this call's agenda.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and also George. Andreas, those were already very concrete inputs and observations. And yeah, this is very much appreciated. And I'm sure we will have the opportunity to discuss this a bit more later on. But now we will first cross the ocean once again and continue to Poland, where Johanna and Piotr will inform us about the Polish gaming market. And don't forget to ask your questions in the chat, and we will answer them afterwards. And now over to Warsaw.
Thank you, Rihanna. And thank you everybody for listening. We've now heard from 2 of the giants in the gaming and esports industry. But what we have not heard so far is all the possibilities that Poland also has to offer. Right in the heart of Europe, very close to Austria. Because what we have realized is that Poland, the image, is still rather twisted in Austria. So you might think, okay, there's a lot of kielbasa, a lot of sausage and vodka, and maybe not such nice architecture. But what you actually need to know about Poland is that it is really modern. It has won a lot of prizes in architecture. There is great street art. There is even a beach that is beautiful. And you have, and that is the most important thing, motivated, educated, and really creative and intelligent people, especially also in the programming sector. And one of the people that supports those as well is Piotr, who is right now with us from the Krakow Technology Center, who is responsible not only for the premier festival, the Dragon Gaming Festival in Krakow, but also to support the industry in Poland. Piotr, I'm very excited to hear you enlighten everybody else about the possibilities of Poland.
Thank you, Hannah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. So today I will share with you a couple of facts about Polish game industry. Yeah, a couple of facts about Polish game industry. It's going to be a kind of brief overview with some numbers and some, I would say, very important events which happened during a few last years in Poland. My name is Piotr Gomracy, and I am director at Krakow Technology Park, responsible for creative industries. And I also have a background as a head of game studio and a producer with around 12 years of experience within gaming industry. So let's have a look at some numbers. So according to the Game Industry of Poland report, in the country we have over 440 game studios. What is actually interesting here, when we look at last 3 years, 120 studios were shut down, and at the same time 160 game studios were open. So as you can see, the business is very dynamic. It's not so easy to find the success here. However, people are trying every day. We estimate that around like 10,000 people are working in the Polish game industry right now, and we are not talking here about only engineers. We are talking here about artists, animators, marketing people, product people, data analysts, quality assurance. So variety of competences are needed to produce the game. When we look at year 2019, Poland produced and released around 480 games, which is of course like a very big number. But we need to also remember that games have different sizes, different budgets, and not every game has a budget and is big enough like Witcher 3. In 2019, in terms of revenue, Polish game market generated 475 million euros. So it's quite a big number. We believe that this number is actually even higher. However, of course, we don't have like exact numbers. We also estimate that this year, so 2020, this number can be higher, even 50%, by even 50%. So it's like quite a nice jump, and it's due to the fact of new releases like Cyberpunk 2077, Ghost Runner, Fishing Clash, for example, and many others. Of course, gaming industry is like kind of global market. So 96% of games produced in Poland are exported, and this, of course, like a supernatural fact. When we look at stock exchange market in Poland, you can notice that over 50 gaming companies are listed there. We already know that over 12 companies, gaming companies, planning IPO in Q1 2021. So the stock market is very popular, let's say, destination for the gaming industry to raise money for production purpose, to scale up the business, but it's also a very popular way to make exit for the investors. CG Projekt Red, the developer behind the Witcher series and upcoming Cyberpunk 2077, has market capitalization around 8.5 billion euros, and is the biggest company on the Warsaw Stock Exchange right now. As you can see on the slide, I'm not sure if the slide lights us up to date because it's very dynamic. But a month ago, like Poland was #1 in terms of gaming companies listed on the stock exchange. Of course, like companies have different sizes, so it's very tough to compare only from that angle to Japan, for example, where we see like very big companies like Nintendo and so on. But anyway, it's quite nice sign for the Polish industry. So in terms of the size of the companies, so as you can see on the slide, 61% of gaming companies in Poland have less than 9 employees, so are quite like small. However, we also see that 4% of gaming companies hire more than 50 employees, and we also ask or conduct survey in Poland, asking what are the plans for 2021, and 72% of development studios declare to increase deployment in 2021. So we know, and we are pretty sure that industry gonna grow in coming year. I think that also good to look at the market percents, just to give you idea about, like, say, sustainability and stability of the Polish game industry. So here we see that 40% of the gaming companies are older than 5 years, which can tell us that they are mature enough to be sustainable on the market, which we all know it's not so easy. We also see a lot of young companies, I think 32% of companies haven't been here 2 years ago. It's relatively easy to access funds right now in Poland, and everyone is living dream to build next CG Project Red. So everyone is trying to do it. When we look at the map in Poland and trying to figure out where all the studios are located, of course we have two regions: the center of Poland with the capital city Warsaw, and we see that 31% of companies and gaming studios are located there. And then we have another region which is like south of the Poland with Kraków, Katowice, and Wrocław, and we have like a lot of studios also there. There are a couple of reasons why companies decide to open offices there. One of the main are because big studios are already there, and it's kind of natural that after a while, people leaving companies and setting up something new, something own, and also the presence of big universities, which produce good engineers, artists, specialists, and also the IT market is very big there, like Warsaw, Kraków, Katowice, Wrocław. So you can try attract engineers from other industries to gaming industries. So that are kind of like main reasons why companies are setting up studios there. So now I would like to talk a bit about games itself, and I would like to highlight that gaming industry is like kind of global industry. It's hard to tell. It's hard to say like it's Polish industry or it's USA industry and so on. No, it's global industry, and what I really actually I'm happy about is that right now in Poland we have plenty of products we can be proud of. It's global recognition, it's IP leverage, and one of the main example here is of course the Witcher series, which is extremely successful game from CG Projekt Red. We all know the TV show on Netflix, which also was like extremely successful for the Netflix. We know that animation movie is coming, I believe, next year to the Netflix, and of course everything is based on the fantasy books written by Andrzej Sapkowski. And what is actually interesting here, we can see that other companies trying to follow the same path. So to build a very strong IP and leverage it later on. Everyone anticipates right now Cyberpunk 2077, also from CG Projekt Red. And like when you look at this title, you can see Keanu Reeves, who is like superstar from Hollywood, involved in this project. Netflix already announced, I believe, animation TV show Cyberpunk. You can look at games like Observers and Medium from Bloober Team, where superstars from Hollywood are also like involved. We have successful games like Frostpunk, and studio right now is working on, let's say, to monetize that in different ways, like, for example, board games. One of the successful Kickstarter campaign is around Frostpunk and board game. What is actually interesting, like games have an impact on the culture, and this is one of the great example. So in 2020, the Polish Chancellery of the Prime Minister announced that this War of Mine will be added to the recommended reading list in Polish high school during the academic year. So right now, students are learning a bit about history and so on from the games, which is like I think that only one example around the world I can actually recall right now. Another interesting projects. So games are also like with innovative ideas. And here I would like to mention 2 games. One is Liberated, which is kind of action adventure game that unfolds across the pages of comics. Great hand-drawn graphic novels with interactivity, seamless blend between a game and comic. Also very successful one. And another one, which is like Super Horde, which is a first-person shooter. And what is interesting here is the gameplay mechanics. The time progress only if a player moves. So this kind of create opportunity for the player to assess their situation in slow motion and respond accordingly. And what you can notice here, Super Horde is like extremely innovative gameplay, but very, let's say, simple graphic. But it's fine. The game is like successful. I think it was sold over 1 million items when it was launched. Mobile games. That's quite new, I would say, in Poland in terms of the mobile games and success there, because we are kind of known from the PC and console market. However, recent years shown us that here we also can have some successes. And I would like to share here with you a couple of games. The first one is Fishing Clash. It's kind of a hobby game for the mobile devices. And what is interesting here, this game is, of course, free to play. So you don't need to pay to play this game. However, when you look at the numbers, just in September, this game generated 9 million US dollars revenue. So it's just 1 month. So we can estimate that this game gonna bring the developer over $100 million yearly, which is like extremely successful. Then we have like Real Boxing game from Vivid Games, and involvement of a superstar like Sylvester Stallone, and Landlord Go, which is also interesting project connected with the real-time data from the market. Another interesting trend is like simulators, and I'm kind of like laughing around that because players actually enjoy this type of games. And when I look at the Polish market right now, everyone is doing simulators, and simulators about everything. So you have like, you know, simulator of truck driver, a simulator of priest, simulator of homeless people, simulators of presidents, simulators of everything. So quite interesting trend. So like in terms of like Krakowski Park Technologiczny and how we like support game industry. So we have a couple of tools trying to support game industry. One of the main is of course our Digital Dragons conference, which is held every year in May. 2,900 developers and experts from entire world visiting the conferences. 1,000 businesses from around the world, 65 countries. If you are from the game industry, you need to be there. Then we have Digital Dragons Academy, where we train, let's say, people who are considering game industry as a next step in their like career. We also have a Digital Dragons incubator for small teams, small game development teams, where we provide a mentorship program when we try to connect them with publishers, VC funds. We also conduct the market research about Polish game industry. So all of the data you can see here, we actually extract by ourselves from the industry. And we also try to promote Polish game developers around the world using government support and pushing these developers to different trade fairs and conferences. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. And I think if you have like some questions, I believe it's gonna be space for me to answer them. And right now, I would like to invite Rianne.
Thank you very much, Piotr, and also Johanna, for these great insights about the Polish market. I must say I have learned quite a lot today, and I hope the same goes for our audience. And from the contributions we have heard this far, I think we can conclude that in spite of the very challenging times we are going through right now, there is still a lot of potential in this sector. So this all sounds very promising. In the meantime, we have received a lot of questions. So I suggest that we will continue with the discussion right away. I would like to invite all the speakers to turn on your microphones and cameras again. And of course, you can also always contact us with any kinds of questions you have, because that's what we are here for. And let me now start with the first question, which is a question for Jim. And 1 second, sorry, my screen is moving. The question is, how important do you think live streaming is for esports? Do you know which platforms and broadcasting tools people in Asia are using?
I think live streaming is extremely important for esports because the fact that it provides channels for the tournament organizers and also the professional players as well. Because like it provides a place for they're able to upload daily contents, and for the players they can connect with the audiences and just to expand their fan base. About the streaming platform in China, the two biggest one is Huya and Douyu TV. They have millions of followers, and also they probably bring most of the profit when it comes to streaming. In Asia in general, I think Twitch is still the biggest one because simply includes it's a global thing. It's a global platform, so it includes more countries other than China. But yeah, so if you're talking about in India or Indonesia, Southeast Asia, so those countries probably focus on Twitch. But in China, you'll be Huya and Douyu.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. The next question is for Andreas. Actually, there are two questions that are related, so I will ask them both. The first one is, what do you think of streaming of games? Could this be a future trend too, like Google Stadia? And the second question is, how do you see live streaming for mobile in the future? Right now, most live streamed content on Twitch and YouTube is desktop related. How will this change in the future? And what role does this streaming play for Google Play Gaming?
Yeah, thank you. Both are great questions, actually. So on the first one, on streaming platforms, definitely super interesting. I think one place that I would point to is like Newzoo publishes a report on a regular basis on cloud streaming, and I think they track essentially growth rates there. I think that's a really good read. Definitely exciting, definitely a growth market, and I think there is a couple of like offerings in the market. So I think over the next couple of years we'll see like really strong growth, and then also content built specifically for streaming platforms. So I think that will be an exciting future. One thing to acknowledge, even mobile as it is right now is very much powered by essentially cloud, and a lot of content is essentially streamed. So you have a mobile client and content is in the end like streamed in the background. So just to be aware of that and that dynamic. And then on the second question of mobile and streaming, and so this is like not streaming the game, but watching the game on YouTube, and Twitch came up too. I think we're very much in this already. I think markets with stronger PC penetration probably see less of that, and I assume Austria is very much in that area. But if you look at some of the big mobile games that have very large audiences internationally, for example, Garena Free Fire, super big in Brazil, super big in Southeast Asia, with hundreds of millions of players. Those are actually some of the games that are like one of the top streamed games at this point. And I think this is only accelerating from here. So I think in terms of like mobile streaming, but then potentially at some point esports too, in a bigger way than it is right now. I think it is still relatively early days, but definitely fast acceleration from here and an interesting opportunity.
Thank you very much, Andreas. I also have a question for Piotr here. Are there any interesting game collaboration projects between Austria and Poland going on that you are excited about to see how they will turn out? Are you aware of any collaborations?
Good question. Actually, I'm not aware about collaboration right now between Austria and Poland. And to be honest, it's a bit like hard to have like any insights on it, since like every developer is very, let's say, enigmatic about what they are doing if they are in the middle of production. Everything is under NDA, and they don't actually release any information before the game is launched.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I add something here from the economic side. It is true that there is Austrian companies coming to Poland for programming services and also to found their own companies in programming general. Not saying gaming alone, but also other possibilities, because education is good, people are good, and there is potential here.
Thank you very much. This is a very nice last statement, because unfortunately we are already running out of time. But as I mentioned before, we will try to get back to you with regarding all the questions on an individual base, because we have received quite a lot of questions during the webinar. And yes, unfortunately, we have now come to an end of this very insightful and inspiring webinar. And I would like to thank all our speakers once again for their great contributions. And also a big thank you to the audience for joining us today and for your active participation and asking so many interesting questions. I hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly did. And we will get back to you soon with the link to the YouTube link to the webinar, and some more information about our offerings in the field of gaming and esports. So you will hear from us, and you are also always more than welcome to contact us. And yeah, we wish you a pleasant evening, and thank you very much again for everything. Goodbye.